Arthroscopic rotator cuff repair. This patient has a massive rotator cuff tear. You see the ball in the socket of the shoulder below. You shouldn't be able to see that because the rotator cuff should be in the way, but it's torn. We're going to use a suture hook from one side of the rotator cuff to the other side of the torn rotator cuff. And this has a suture loop in it that we deploy. We have a suture grasper to grab it. I'm going to use that to shuttle back a very strong stitch with a Kevlar core. Kevlar is the same material used in police officers' bulletproof vest. And we grab the other end of the suture. We're going to tie this together. Look at the size of the tear, and as we start to pull this first stitch together, just putting the first stitch in it cuts down the size of the tear by about 50%. Makes it a lot easier to work with. See how the size of the tear decreases? We use a special arthroscopic knot. Just tie it, holds it together, and then we use 3 smaller knots to back up that first knot to make sure that it doesn't slip. This is all done arthroscopically. There's a fluid medium, so you may see some motion of the tissues. That's what it's from, the flow of the water. Now we're going to go to the apex of the tear, to the left. Again, putting the suture hook across, deploying the suture loop. Grabbing it. And shuttling a strong suture through the apex of the tear. Grasp the other limb of the suture. And tie this down also. I'm not going to show all of the backup throws from now on, but there's always 3 smaller knots backing up each special arthroscopic knot. We're going to do this 2 more times. These are called margin convergence stitches, and these just zip up the rotator cuff like the door of a tent. You really have to look at the tear pattern because you have to sew it up the way it needs to be sewn up based on the tear pattern so that it's very low tension. Anything repaired under tension will not heal. You want a very low tension repair, and by suturing the rotator cuff this way, this very low tension gives it the best chance to heal. You can see how nicely it's coming together. It's almost but not quite over the bone we want it to heal to. So we're going to do just one more to get it all the way down so it just sits there without any tension whatsoever, so that when we put the anchor to sew it directly to the bone, there's no tension and it can heal. Again, the suture hook, the suture loop being deployed, shuttling stitch, getting both ends, and tying them. Now it's going to come right down onto the bone that we want it to heal to. Very low tension repair. Now we're going to place a suture anchor into the bone to tie the rotator cuff tendon down onto the bone. First we use an awl, we mallet this into the bone to create a hole for the suture anchor. And you can see the hole we leave there that we created. This is a suture anchor. It screws in. It's plastic. It's very hard. It's very durable. And it has 2 very strong stitches that come from it. which we can use to tie each half of the rotator cuff tear down to the bone. We remove the instrumentation, leaving just the suture anchor and the suture. Place the suture hook through, deploy the suture loop. And we use the grasper to take one of the strong suture ends out. Then outside the body we shuttle it inside the loop, which will shuttle the strong suture through the rotator cuff tendon. Take the other end of the suture. And again, we're going to tie this down with a very strong, specialized arthroscopic knot. And you can see how it presses the rotator cuff tendon right onto the bone we want it to heal to. And after tying all of the other stitches and knots, we cut it. Now we're going to do the same thing to the other half of the rotator cuff. Come through it with the suture hook. Deploy the suture loop. Take it outside the body, along with one end of the very strong suture. Shuttle it back so it goes through the rotator cuff tendon. Then we're going to tie it down, again forcing the rotator cuff tendon onto the bone we want it to heal to for a very low tension repair. And you can look where there was a massive rotator cuff tear. Now you don't even see the tear, you just see the sutures. Both halves of the rotator cuff are onto the bone. Beautiful repair. All done.